All right, guys, you know the drill. Just shoot me a text that you have a question, and then I'll prompt you, and then you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Coach Mulkey here. And as I think most of you know, we're on here to discuss the fact that the NCAA at Division I level just announced that acrobatics and tumbling is a emerging sport, which helps. That's the next step in terms of getting it recognized as a championship sport at the NCAA level, and something Coach Fee's been working on for 12 plus years. So thought we'd get her on here to kind of share what that process looked like, what this feels like, and kind of where we go from here. So with that said, let's see. Let's start with Jerry. Jerry Hill.
Yes. Hey, Coach Fee, how are you?
Hey, Jerry. Good. How are you?
I'm great. Well, how exciting was that? I mean, obviously, I think it was maybe Division II and III or something that had already been granted that. But how big was this for the sport?
It was huge. You know, Division II and III, their vote was in January. Ours was Division I was supposed to be in April, and then due to COVID-19, that vote was delayed. I mean, understandably so. They had a lot of other things to deal with in those moments. We really wanted this vote to go through so that we could start August the 1st along with our Division II and III counterparts. So it was very important for us to be able to do that. Plus, we have a lot of Division I interests that want to add the sport that have been, you know, kind of waiting around for this vote to come through. So it was huge. It was a big week. John Morris, I promise not to get emotional today. I did. If you guys listened to JMO yesterday, I got a little choked up. I even got some texts about it. I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, it's embarrassing. But yeah, this has been a wonderful week. It was a good week for Division I, good week for Baylor, and then just for the sport overall.
All right, next question. Bryce, do you have a question?
Yeah, Fee. So you mentioned the interest from other schools. I mean, what do you feel like the timetable will be for, you know, some Division I schools adding the sport now? I mean, do you feel like that number is just going to go up and up and up?
I really do. You know, had COVID-19 not happened, well, let me give a little bit of background. So we're at 30 NCAA schools right now, and that's across all 3 divisions. To become a championship sport, you have to have 40 schools. I can say that most emerging sports who get into the process have nowhere near 30 NCAA schools. So we are well into the process. So had COVID-19 not happened, I think we would have hit 40 by Christmas. In all different divisions. And I think Division I, we will see those additions come on as well. So to answer your question specifically about Division I, we have received interest during quarantine, during COVID-19, as schools start to plan for their recovery. And I mean, because let's face it, it's going to be a recovery when we come out of this. Everyone in the country, they're starting to plan their programs and whatnot. And we are received interest as recent as yesterday from a Division I school that's exploring. So that doesn't mean, you know, they quietly explore as they should, as they're kind of doing things internally. But we've had 5 inquiries since, and there were more inquiries prior, but we've had 5 inquiries since COVID-19 happened from the Division I community. So I foresee this as we come out of this and we find some new semblance of normal, that you're going to see it grow in the Division I landscape pretty quickly.
Next question from John Morris.
Don't ever apologize for being emotional. You deserve it after that. Given the landscape in college athletics, you know, budgets may be tight now, and it's going to be a shortfall for most athletic departments. I know you have a good sales pitch for adding A&T, even in this time. What are the pluses, or, you know, how would you sell this, even given the economic climate right now?
Well, you know, a lot of our schools, I think it's different for each school that adds the reason for adding. Some schools add for Title IX purposes, for gender equity purposes, and that's not going to go away. That requirement is not going to go away because of COVID-19. So there's still going to be a need for schools that need to add a sport, a female sport for gender equity numbers. I am sorry about that. So there will be, you know, that will be a need. Another thing that we see at some of our schools is the enrollment driven portion of it. So our roster, we have 40 plus athletes on our roster. We will have 48 on our roster next fall. That's quite a bit of student athletes coming into the university. We're an equivalency sport, so we do not give full rides. So there's a net positive, if you will, to the university, to any university who adds acrobatics and tumbling. There's a net positive for the university because we're bringing in this unique set of student athletes who would not otherwise be at their school. These are new students coming into the school. So we hope, that it will help. But, you know, we definitely don't want to put anybody in any more dire straits than they may be in anyway with this recovery from COVID-19. But our hope is that we can be part of a solution for many schools that need that tuition piece, need that enrollment piece, and then obviously if there's a gender equity piece to it as well. So we're just going to try to keep it on the positive end and hope that we can be a help in those days.
Next question from Curtis.
Hey, Coach, you mentioned you got a little bit emotional and you mentioned where kind of the sport is right now. What has this journey to this point? Because I know you've been a really huge advocate for the sport to get to this point. What is it about the journey that made it so emotional for you? And how rewarding was it to finally see that announcement from the NCAA?
Yeah, I mean, we probably don't have time for me to go through the whole story, Curtis, because it's a pretty good one. I need to write it down. But it has literally been 12 years. I was part of the initial group that started the sport when I was at the University of Oregon. So this is the first sport to be created, other than football, that was created and implemented at the collegiate level first. And then it has trickled down and is now trickling down into the youth. Now, the skill set in our sport has been around since forever. You know, gymnastics has been around forever. But the skill set competed in this way. We created that. And we pulled from all different disciplines of gymnastics, some elements of competitive cheer, because competitive cheer is ridiculously athletic. And we put it into this package that would fit in every university in the country. And we did it. I think the reason that I know the reason we did it, and one of the reasons we were so emotional about it, was we did it the right way for the right reasons. We created this looking through the lens of every student athlete that could benefit from it, through the lens of every college administrator who could add the sport, through the lens of the spectator, and really built it with all of those things in mind. So literally 13 years ago, this sport did not exist. It started 12 years ago on a napkin as I was flying from the University of Oregon down to Southern California on my first recruiting trip. And it has evolved. It has not been just me. There is a village of us that have worked on it. But there have been tons of roadblocks. We changed it. People don't like, I think, just inherently don't like change, right? It's scary. And so here we are trying to create something new. And we really had to get hold of those change agents out there, those visionary programs like Baylor, like the University of Oregon, who wanted to do something different and do it for the right reasons. So we met with skepticism. I think my first year at Oregon, pretty much everybody hated me there because they thought they were like, well, this is the cheerleading coach and they're trying to make this a sport. And that's not what we were doing. We created this not to interfere with cheer. I think that's a fantastic activity. It's so important. They're on the front porch of Baylor all the time. Our cheerleaders are fantastic. We didn't want to interfere with collegiate gymnastics that was already there. But there was this group of women. There is a group of female athletes that were underserved. And they fit right in between those two things. And so, you know, I mean, for 12 years, we have thought, I was going to tell you, in Oregon, I've got so many stories. I won't go into all of them, but just going in to your biggest skeptics and saying, why do you hate me? Like, I sat down with this guy named Gary Gray, who was our compliance thing. I'm like, why are you so against this? And he shot back at me all of these reasons that he did not agree with what we were doing. And he was so right. And because he didn't understand exactly what we were doing, but his commentary to me really helped shape what the sport is today and allowed us to continue to do it in the right way. And then so it could fit into an NCAA. We wanted to be an NCAA sport, so it could fit into every college. You know, we met with that kind of stereotype. I mean, there have been other big business that have tried to shut us down and buy us out and stop us because they're afraid we're going to affect their bottom line. There have been organizations that just do not believe what we're doing. To this day, I still have to say, this is not cheerleading. We love our Spirit and Traditions program. They are fantastic. We are not cheerleading. So just think about that over the course of 12 years, just changing a stereotype, educating. And I constantly tell John Morris or whoever will ask me, if you've never seen a meet, just come out. Even if you think you're going to hate it, come out and see it. Because once you see one, you will go, holy moly, those kids are super athletic. This was fun, you know, and we've just kind of, over those 12 years, just gained all of this support behind us. So, and think of this, okay? So 12 years, blood, sweat, and tears, and we're almost to the finish line, right? Like we got that vote in January for divisions 2 and 3, cried then too. And we're almost to the finish line, and then a pandemic happens. Is there ever been a better twist in a story? Like we couldn't write the story better, right? And so to be able to come through, be part of the pandemic, and then for the Division I Council to still see the value in moving us through into emerging sports status. So Curtis, I don't know if that helped, but there's a big story that goes behind it that I could go on for days, and I'll try not to.
That was great. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Next question from Jerry Hill.
It's already back around to me. Following up on that a little bit, and you mentioned the pandemic being maybe one of those walls, but I just wonder, in those 12 years, have you had to are there moments where you've hit the wall or frustration, those kind of things that you had to fight through, or has it been enough of a steady progression that you always felt like this would happen?
I think I had bad days because there were some big hurdles that we had to get over. But I always had, you know, people, I think I feel sorry for myself for a few minutes, and then you get that fight back in you, you know, and you keep going. We had a little celebration Zoom call the other night after the call with Renee Baumgartner, who is the president of that national organization and also the athletic director at Santa Clara. She hired me at Oregon back in the day. Our executive director, Janelle, Melinda Greer, who is our Title IX kind of expert who's been working with us the whole time. And then Pat Kilkenny, who was the athletic director at Oregon when they hired me, and he started the sport. So we had a drink and we were just celebrating, and we talked about that, Jerry, about how Pat was amazed because he hasn't been the athletic director there for quite some time. And he goes, I just can't believe you guys wouldn't give up. He goes, I haven't followed it, you know, as closely as I should have over the years, but every time I heard you would not give up, no one would give up. And we talked about how if I had a bad day, I had a colleague that was pulling me up, you know, and they may be having a bad day and we would pull them up. But quitting truly was never an option, but there were some downtimes for sure. But I guess persistence. I mean, you guys are probably tired of me preaching about this. So now we can maybe, after this has all happened, y'all are going to be excited. We can talk about other things because I've been filling your ears with this for 7 years now, 6 years.
Because follow up on that, one of the things I wondered about, Maryland dropped it fairly early. Are there some P5 type programs on the horizon that could be joined? Yes,
Maryland dropped early along with like 7 other sports just due to budget cuts in their department. And that was like, I think in 2012 that happened. And so we went for a year with 5 teams, and then we doubled in size the following year. So there was always this bounce back. I do think you're going to see some Power 5 schools add. I think COVID's going to slow everything down a little bit, and that's okay. But I do think you're going to see some Power 5 schools add. And honestly, that's when I've been promising this for a while, but that's when it's really going to blow up.
Next question from Darby.
Yeah, hello. So I guess my question, you were at Oregon and obviously made big strides there. What do you feel like what you've done at Baylor and how this community has kind of come behind this program? How big do you think that was in this decision coming about?
I think it's huge. You nailed it. I mean, Baylor set the standard in every way. How they implement the sport, how they treat their student athletes, how they fund the program, the compliance office, the business office. Every single person associated with Baylor absolutely set the standard for the sport across the country. There's no comparison. So for us, we want a lot more Baylors, which we know there's only one, but we want a lot more Baylors out there to add and to do it the right way and do it this way. And Oregon did a great job. Baylor just does things differently, and they are committed to doing it the right way. And it has been that way since day one, and it is still that way today. Our administration really helped in this vote. Mac Rhodes was calling friends, advocating, that were on the council, educating, and that's just how it works, right? So there's other people on the council that he's colleagues with, and all they know of A&T is what they see written on a sheet of paper. So Mac made some phone calls for us to explain, like, hey, this is the real deal. This is a great sport. It'd mean a lot for the entire country if this could go through. So Mac played a role down the stretch for us too, and that was huge to me. John Morris, I say this all the time, is a huge advocate for us, and the things he does, fantastic. I remember my first year here, Bryce Cherry. I don't know if he liked A&T before I got here. I can't tell. But he wrote this fantastic article that first year, and it spoke to everyone. And I think I hope I called and thanked you, or at least sent you an email. But I was like, yes, this is what people need to hear. It was like the skeptic coming into the room and just telling it like they saw it. So to answer your question, Baylor's played a huge role in where we are today, and I foresee Baylor remaining the standard. Like, let's stay out in front of everybody. Let's continue to do it the right way. So we're gonna stay up there.
Next question from Mandy.
Hey, Coach. In your response to Curtis's question, from your transition, at Oregon and to Baylor, it obviously takes a lot of courage to, get past roadblocks. How did you kind of develop that courage to do that and to get where you are today? And kind of a second question paired in with it, that courage that you have, how have you, passed that on to your players, to teach them, that they can do anything kind of like they set their mind to?
Mm-hmm. When I'm from Georgia originally, so I had to move across the country to go to Oregon. And Pat Kilkenny asked me in my interview when I flew out there, why are you doing this? Because it was not enough money to move across the country for. And I just said, and at the time, Mandy, we didn't even know what we were starting. We just knew we were going to do something really special, right? And I knew in my gut, like, no, I want to do this. I knew early on I wanted to be a coach, and I wanted to be a full-time coach. I wanted to be an NCAA coach. But I didn't have the skill set to coach that sport, right? And so this was me kind of, I guess, chasing that dream. But once we realized that what impact we could make just on the student athletes, like, we're changing lives. These kids are getting the chance of a lifetime to compete at these universities across the country. So once it was no longer about like, oh, well, I could do this, and you had this big thing that you could do that could make impact, bigger and bigger, there was just no stopping us. So for me, it wasn't about courage. The move wasn't a big deal going out to Oregon. I'd never actually, when I first heard about the job, I did not know if Oregon, you guys, I did not travel a lot, but I didn't know if Oregon was the closest one to Canada or not. I know now Washington's closest to Canada, in case you don't know. But that's it. For me, it was like, I'm just going to go out and do this. And it just, I don't know, we were just never going to quit. So I don't know how to put it into words. I will tell, I talk to young coaches and I talk to student athletes, obviously, all the time. But I just feel like when you go towards something and you attack it, instead of thinking of all the reasons you can't do something, just decide it's going to happen and think about all the reasons it's going to happen. And I tell my team that all the time, all the reasons you can, stop focusing on the negative. So that's probably how it was, just never an option like, okay, this is going to be tough, but this is how we're going to do it. And then, I spoke to some young coaches here a couple of days ago, and I tell everybody that I talk to, especially someone coming up in the industry, is do not let it be an option that you can't have it all. Like, female coaches, we need more of them, right? Do not let it be an option that you cannot have it all. You can have a family, you can have a fantastic career, and you can do whatever you want. So I guess that's my constant messaging, Mandy. I don't know how to put it into words, but I guess I'm just stubborn. You could just call me stubborn. That's probably a good explanation too.
Thank you.
One question here from Jerry Hill.
Hey, Fee, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but because if I remember right, Oregon, the crowds weren't great. You kind of built it a little bit there, and it hadn't like blown the roof off, but just the way that Waco has embraced it, how, the fans coming out and stuff, what's that been like for you?
We have the best crowds in the country for sure. The best game day atmosphere. That goes back to our marketing department and game day engagement, all that fan engagement, all that. They're fantastic. But the Waco community just loves Baylor. Just period. Just loves Baylor. And so it was so wonderful to be embraced not as, oh, well, this is a new sport, but to be embraced as a Baylor sport. And the community's been fantastic. They've allowed me to educate them over and over again. And I always promise, if you come to a meet, I'll give you your money back if you didn't have a good time. So I haven't been asked for any money back. But the crowds have been amazing. They continue to grow. We've held the championship here now 3 times. In my opinion, it's the best place to host the championship. So what I love the most is there's a lot of youth there, it spans all ages. You're like little toddlers they are engaged in what's going on during the meet, because there's people flipping around. How can you not be engaged? And then all the way up to like donors who have football season tickets and have been, are Baylor alum from whenever ago. They're coming in, sending emails, loving it. So Baylor just does it differently. I wish I had better words for it, but it's just such a special place.
Okay, thanks everyone. I think unless anybody else has any last questions. Bryce wants to wrap it up for us.
Yeah, Fee, so you did convert me. You're like the Billy Graham of A&T, but but
that is a new one. I have not heard that one.
My question was, this could be years down the road. I don't know, 10, 20, whatever, but could it ever get to the point where you have a Division I championship, a Division II championship, and you have to have 40 in each of those divisions for that to happen?
That's a great question. So yes. So let me give you a little the way it processes. So we have 30 now competing. When we get to 40 teams competing in an academic year in at least 5 competitions during that season. So we can add, had COVID not happened, we would have probably had 40 teams by December, but they would have had to recruit for a year. So keep that in mind. Like there has to be 40 teams competing in a true season. At that point, the NCAA will look at legislation for us to become a championship sport. At that point, it will be a championship sport for all divisions, right? Like everybody together. When one of the divisions reaches 40 members, they would then have their own championship. So I don't know. Division II, they currently have, I think they're at 21 or 22 Division II schools out there right now. 2 conferences already sponsor it as a conference sport. So I would foresee that group probably getting to the 40 as well. But I 100% see a Division I championship and a Division II championship. I don't know the time, but I hope it's sooner than 10 years. I think this is going to blow up really quickly, and the more we keep talking about it, the more people see it on TV. I think more and more schools will add it across the country. So hopefully that'll be sooner than we think.